Good morning. No, I forgot to check to see if I'm on my page or my workshop page. But regardless, well out there. Today we look at the book of, or first four chapters of Hosea. And Hosea is the first of the 12 minor prophets. And so there's 12 books left we have in the Old Testament. If we were doing New Testament, we'd be starting the book of Revelation today. But Hosea, as I said, is the first of these final, the 12 minor prophets. And they're called minor prophets not because their message was less, not because they were less important, but because they're shorter than Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Isaiah. But in these 12 books that are the minor prophets they've been together, as this group of 12 for many years. Even in the Hebrew scriptures, they are together that way. Hosea's ministry is to the northern kingdom, and he comes, shortly after Amos. Even though Amos, the book, is 2 books after Hosea. But Amos had spoken to the southern kingdom, and we'll talk more about that when we get there. But Hosea is speaking to the northern kingdom, who are suffering with a war with Assyria. And Hosea, it's such a strange book. God tells Hosea to take Gomer for his wife, and Gomer is a prostitute, a whore, and you think, wow, that's really strange. Why would a man of God, a prophet, marry someone like that? But God has his reasons, and God is showing those Israelite people, how unfaithful they are, and there are many things in this book of Hosea that aren't exactly clear, and many people speculate that, especially the first 3 children that Hosea and Gomer are shown as having together, that Hosea may not be the dad. That even after they were married, that Gomer continued her life of being a prostitute, and so it's possible that these children weren't even Hosea's. But that's, again, beside the point. The whole point of the beginning part of the book, especially chapter 1, Hosea is told to take this prostitute, this whore, Gomer, and marry her. Take her as his wife, love her, cherish her, be faithful to her. And Hosea is faithful to her, just as God is faithful to his people Israel. And just like the people Israel, who are unfaithful to God, who worship false idols, who follow the whims and the wiles of other countries and other nations, and forget about the God of creation, the God who chose them to be his people, and they continue to sin. And so God is comparing the Israelites to this prostitute, saying, you're not faithful at all. You just run and you do whatever you want, and other people are taking advantage of you. Other people are, they're just doing everything. And you're not who you should be. So anyway, as the book begins, as I mentioned already, the word of the Lord came to Hosea, and he goes and he marries this woman. And verse 3 says, she conceived and bore him a son. And God said, what to name this son. And then verse 6, she conceived again and bore a daughter. And the Lord said, name her this. And then she conceived again and had the 3rd child. And God says to name this child Ami. And for you are not my people, and I am not your God. Think about that. That's what your name that means. That you are not my people, and I am not your God. And the other names The name of the girl was, name her this because I will no longer have pity on the land of Israel. And so he's naming these children, showing the land of Israel how sinful they've been and how God is, ready to abandon them, ready to say, my people wouldn't do that. And verse 10 says, yet the number of people shall be like the sand of the sea, which can neither be numbered or measured. And so God just, he's speaking through the prophet Hosea, saying to the people, you're unfaithful, you are not worthy, you run away and you're doing all of the things that I would not have you do. And then chapter 2 talks about, it says it's kind of, number 2 and 3 basically, it's how Hosea and Gomer are getting along, and she's unfaithful. She leaves him, and it's all of this is showing how God will welcome, invite, entice the people to come back to him. Chapter 3. Chapter 3 begins with, God saying again, go and love a woman who has a lover and is an adulteress. And so I bought her back for 15 shekels of silver. He bought his wife back from the brothel, and he says, you must remain mine. You shall not play the whore. You shall not have intercourse with a man, nor I with you. And it's you got to be faithful. And this is what God is saying to his people. What God says, all of the time. And he says, afterwards the Israelites shall return and seek the Lord their God. And they will come in awe to the Lord and his goodness. And so it's such a, in so many ways, such a strange way for God to approach his people. But, God has spoken through the prophets. He's shown so many different things and he's to them. And he's favored them many times, but then also he has shown his displeasure. And they haven't been able to hear. And so God is trying another method, and it's kind of like a teacher. A teacher has to come to the level of the student, and a teacher has to reach the student in a manner that the student can understand. The very best teacher in the world, if that teacher knows the subject, inside out, but if the teacher can't explain it to the students in a manner that they can understand it and make sense of it, like to say 2 + 2 = 4. Just to say it doesn't mean anything. But if you take 2 apples and 2 apples and you then show it, then you got 4. Well, then, you have to paint a picture for them. You gotta make it so that it's real for them. And this is what God is trying to do for the Israelites. He's trying in another manner. He's, if 2 apples and 2 apples don't work together, well, he's going to try something different. And so many people have trouble with fractions. That's another horrible thing to try to learn, and some of this algebra stuff, But if you have a teacher that explains it, that shows it to you in a manner you can understand. And here God is showing his people that even though they continue to be unfaithful, even though they continue to go and worship false gods, even though they once in a while come back and worship the one true God and are blessed by his love and his grace, they fall away, they sin. And it's the same for you and me. I talked about repenting the other day in my sermon, and to repent means to not just say you're sorry, but to try to chart a new course, to figure out, okay, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing that's not right. What would God have me do? To repent is to try to find a new way, to try to find a way to do what is right. And so God is trying to find a new way for people to understand the enormity of his love, in showing that with Hosea, loving this woman Gomer, even though she's a whore, even though she's unfaithful, even though she does things she shouldn't be doing, Hosea is faithful to her. Hosea loves her for who she is. Maybe not for what she is, but for who she is. And that's what God does for you and for me. He loves us for who we are and whose we are, because we are his.